What's going on, guys? Andrew of Newmark Gaming back here, and today we're going to be talking some about the Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains episode 92 Jump Preview. And there's going to be two little paragraphs of this, so starting off with the first one, Lightning sets a trap. The one who will face Playmaker is... Bowman has crushed Blue Maid and absorbed Aqua. Playmaker decides to pursue Bowman, but Kusinagi then shows up and blocks his path. So starting off with a little bit of a breakdown of this first paragraph, Lightning obviously is the one who's behind this whole master plan. We could probably mostly assume that to begin with, given how Jin is basically Lightning's host, quote unquote, so to speak, if we're describing the Ignis as like a parasite, which isn't a perfect analogy, but sort of works in this case, I guess, to some extent. Basically, Lightning has control of Jin, so he sets up this whole difficult situation for Playmaker to be in, where he's facing Kusanagi and potentially putting Jin in danger in order to protect the world and those types of things. And what's interesting to me about this is this affirms for us 100% that Aoi is gone. Now, we could basically assume that based on the way the episode ended, but this is Yu-Gi-Oh!, so you never know. So this just once more kind of closes the chapter on this portion of the plot for Season 2, that Aoi is gone, Aqua's been absorbed within Bowman. Now, curiously enough, this seems to hint that Bowman is running away or escaping in some way, shape, or form from Playmaker pursuing, or at the very least leaving. Now, it's unlikely to me that Bowman wouldn't be aware that Playmaker is coming for him, given the level of influence and understanding he has over Mirror Link Vrains in particular. I mean, he managed to create literal earthquakes from Mirror Link Vrains into real Link Vrains. So his power there would just kind of imply to me he usually has a general sense of what's going on. I mean, remember how Yusaku has Link Sense, right? He's able to have some degree of knowledge of what's going on within Vrains at all times. Bowman, given how he was literally created by Lightning to be able to dominate an area like Link Vrains, it would strike to me that he most likely can do something similar, so we probably know Playmaker's on his way, which strikes me as maybe he's knowledgeably fleeing from Playmaker for some reason. At which rate, it could be he doesn't feel within his strategy now is the right time to face Playmaker. Maybe he's definitely still working with Lightning, and there isn't the kind of divide that I felt I was starting to see between them yet. At which rate, maybe he knows Lightning's trying to set up so Playmaker faces Kusanagi. Playmaker, even if he comes out of that duel okay, most likely will be very emotionally fatigued and set up for an easier victory for Bowman. Or, the most interesting of these, potentially in my mind, is the fact that Bowman absorbed Aqua's data, right? And Aqua, at her core, was essentially the most sympathetic of all the Ignises. She was the one who was the most understanding, the most outreaching to people, the one who showed the most compassion. So if all of those are definitely the case, which they certainly at least seem to be, then Bowman getting her data, wouldn't at least some of that theoretically pass on to him? I mean, after all, he's taking in the knowledge that she had. I mean, it's literally like me taking a hard drive and dumping it to the hard drive of another computer. All the files from the original hard drive are still there. They're just now present in a different format. So that makes me wonder if almost Bowman may be starting to show a little bit of hesitancy, and that's why he's running from Playmaker. Maybe he needs some time to sort this out, to process all this new information that he obtained from absorbing Aqua. Of course, that is a little bit of a far-fetched theory, especially considering our time window for Season 2 seems to be getting smaller and smaller, and limited time typically means taking a more straightforward approach. That way it's easier to follow, fewer routes to leave unexplored. So I feel like, once more, considering that time frame's kind of crunching on us, probably 4 to 6 weeks at most left to Season 2, that's probably not the way they're going, but I think it would be really cool to integrate that in some way, especially making it feel like Aoi and Aqua's loss wasn't all for naught. Now let's go ahead and move on to the second paragraph we've got going on in this little episode preview, and it's going to read as follows. This week's Kusanagi, hearing Jin's voice. Kusanagi heard Jin's voice coming from the monitor while he was watching over his allies' battle from the real world. He chases after Jin's voice and finds Lightning waiting for him. So this to me sets it up as Lightning and Kusanagi probably come to some sort of an agreement in regards to Jin. That's the reason he faces Playmaker. It sounds like he ends up discovering Lightning because he is trying to chase after what happens with Jin's voice. The fact that he hears it, it's his brother. He's going to go try and figure out what happens. I mean, after all, Jin's been his motivation throughout all this show. So this strikes me as Lightning probably just puppeteers over him and basically says, look, I've got control of Jin right now. As long as I have control of him, his body is at my disposal. I can do whatever I want with it. I can snap my fingers, make him do something that's literally going to lead to his death, or I can continue to allow him to exist. That choice is yours. But in order for you to have the power to make that decision, I'm going to ask a favor of you in return. At which rate, then Kusanagi is essentially leveraged into facing Playmaker. Now, another much more obscure possibility that I think is a lot less likely is that perhaps Lightning sways Kusanagi into seeing his way somehow, or perhaps Lightning manages to essentially manipulate Kusanagi's data so that he's basically mind controlling him into a similar fashion as Jin. That doesn't necessarily strike me as what's going to happen, especially if you've read the episode preview or summary for episode 93. It sounds like Kusanagi is very much of a pretty standard state of mind, given how he's reminding Playmaker of some promise they made from the past and everything else. That doesn't necessarily strike me as the type of route that would be able to happen if Lightning was mind controlling him. I mean, he may have access to all of his memory data, but we don't know for sure exactly how this whole consciousness data thing works, whether that's necessarily tied to one's memories, one's personality, or everything else, or whether it's just tied to their physical ability to control their body and be alive, sort of like an on-off switch type of a setup. We don't know the details of that. Now, granted, if Lightning did have access to Kusanagi's memories and he was mind controlling him, and that's what leads to the duel, he may be able to pull something off like that because he knows what Kusanagi's thoughts are, is able to leverage Playmaker into seeing that, and whatnot. Now, the other option for this is, like, maybe Lightning somehow sways Kusanagi to his side. That I find to be the least likely of our possibilities, because Kusanagi's been pretty strongly with Playmaker, and Lightning has been putting Kusanagi's brother in harm's way for who knows how long now. That vengeance isn't something I necessarily see Kusanagi being willing to give up, which once more brings us back to what I believe to be the most likely possibility, which is just Lightning's leveraging Kusanagi with the fact that he has control of his brother right now, and thus is able to force him to duel Playmaker from there. So all that being said, guys, that about wraps up my additional thoughts on this summary. I don't feel like it gives us a whole lot of new information compared to what we've gotten in the past in regards to episode 92. It is a duel I'm super excited for, and in some ways I'm kind of happy that we didn't get a ton of spoilers because I am so excited for it. I think it's going to be really awesome to watch, so as per usual, be sure to let me know your thoughts, comments, opinions, etc. in the comments section down below. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like and subscribe. If not, constructive criticism is always welcome, and I'll catch you guys next time with some more Yu-Gi-Oh! Vrains.